Have you ever heard of stories of individuals who have committed, let's just say, horrendous crimes? And you wonder, like, how did they ever get there? How did they ever get to the point where they could actually follow through with those actions? Right? Or even people that you know, maybe even followers of Christ, that you're like, man, it seemed like they were in a good spot, in a good place, and then all of a sudden they landed over here. Like, how did they go from being excited about the things of God to being in the Word of God to over to this place where they could actually do that? Or let's get real quick, real fast. Have you ever done something and wondered, why in the world did I do that, right? I mean, I'm sure that there's probably nobody that can relate with that in this room today, right? No, we've all been there, right? Like, man, what just came out of my mouth, right? Did I really just say that? Did I just do that? Did I just think that? Like, where did that come from? I think we could all come up with times where we could think back to some things that we did or said, and we wonder, like, man, how did that even take place? And what thoughts and choices led up to that point where we followed through with those actions? Because let's be really clear. What takes place over here many times is not something that just instinctively happened. There's probably been some steps all along the way that got us over there. We just don't recognize the reality of where we're headed. This morning we're going to talk about specifically our words and our thoughts, because I really believe that if we would contemplate the words that come out of our mouth before we say them, if we think about what's really transpiring within our hearts and minds, I think that if we would work on those areas, it would really derail a lot of things that might happen, that don't need to happen, that don't need to take place. Well, this morning we're continuing in season 2, in message number 2 of our series, Words to Live By. And last week we looked at the powerful passage of Isaiah 40, and we walked through that whole chapter to where it culminates with Isaiah 40, verse 31, that says this: "But they who wait for the Lord who's the everlasting God," that chapter talks about, right? The one whose understanding is unsearchable, the one who is incomparable with any other. "They who wait for the Lord, you shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." And I want to challenge you again, memorize these verses. Because they're verses that we need to know. There's verses that we need to really proclaim and talk about and really speak out loud, as we talked about last week, in our own lives, in times where we are struggling, where we are down, where we need to go to the Lord. We need to claim these verses. Say them out loud. Well, this morning we're going to look at a verse I really believe that's implemented should help us prevent poor decisions and actions. It's not a guarantee. It's not a silver bullet. Don't take it that way, okay? But it should help. This verse comes from the book of Psalms, and it was written by King David. And listen, David was someone who knew all about making poor decisions and poor choices, right? I mean, let's talk about David for a second, right? David was the one who committed adultery with Bathsheba, and in the process of trying to cover it up, put together a plan that led to the death of Uriah, right? Her husband, who, by the way, was one of David's mighty men, one of his most trusted individuals. How in the world did David get over here to that point where he commits adultery and then has this guy sent to the front lines of battle so that he would die, and he felt like he could sweep it under the rug? How did that happen? What took place? Well, he made some poor decisions and choices way back over here, didn't he? We've talked about that in the past. This morning, we're going to talk a little bit about a passage that David wrote. In fact, if you were to go to Psalm 51, you see a lot of David's response to what took place with David in Bathsheba. And you could see about his repentance, his need to seek forgiveness from God, And that's spelled out really clearly, but we're not going to go to Psalm 51. We're going to look at a different psalm. We're going to go to Psalm 19. It's on page 259, or if you're using the Bibles under the chairs around you. And similar to last week, our verse of focus is the final verse in Psalm 19. It's verse 14. And I want to walk through the passage to help us really understand how David comes to the place where he says, Psalm 19, verse 14, which is this: let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. And by the way, I know some of you, your Bibles say, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. Maybe you've memorized it that way. This is how it's worded in the ESV. Either way, memorize it, okay? Great verse. But really, this verse, as we talk about it, I really believe it's a fantastic prayer. And so as we start in this passage this morning, as we dive into this, I want to have a word of prayer, and I specifically want to pray this verse over each and every one of us as we dive into God's word today. Lord, we come to you this morning, and we come asking that the words of our mouth and the meditation of our heart, the things that we think about even now in these coming moments, we ask and pray, God, that the thoughts that come to mind, that the things that we consider, that we contemplate in the next half hour or so, that it would be acceptable, that it would be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, our rock, our Redeemer. God, we ask that you would do a great work in our hearts, that your word would revive our souls today. We ask and we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. So what leads up to Psalm 19, verse 14? And what brought David to the point where he says, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer? Well, we got to go back right to verse 1 and recognize that David simply begins by observing the beauty of God's creation and recognizing how incredible it is. Look at verse 1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. The heavens declare the glory of God, the sky above proclaims his handiwork. In general, can we just recognize that what David's trying to say is God's creation, the things that he has made, point to how incredible he is. Another passage that along those same lines, Psalm 145 says this: I will extol you, my God and my King, and bless your name forever and ever. Every day I will bless you and praise your name forever and ever. Great is the Lord and greatly to be praised, and his greatness is unsearchable. Verse 4, one generation shall commend your works to another. Listen, older generation, that should be us if we want to consider ourselves older, all right? There's somebody younger than you probably in the room, unless you're one of those babies that are out there, all right? But the reality is we need to commend to those that are younger than us the mighty works of God, the mighty acts of God. On the glorious splendor of your majesty and on your wondrous works I will meditate. They shall speak of the might of your awesome deeds, and I will declare your greatness. They shall pour forth the fame of your abundant goodness and shall sing aloud of your righteousness. As this psalm points out, Psalm 145, when we meditate on God's wondrous works, when we take a look, when we open our eyes and ponder God's amazing creation, we can't help but say, man, God is so incredible. This is so amazing. I can't begin to put together how God made this and how he did this and that. Isn't it incredible, right? I often think of the words of Isaiah from Isaiah 6:3, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. As I was thinking about that verse this week, something stuck out to me that I hadn't thought of before, right? Isaiah's having this vision of what's taking place right in heaven and what the throne room is like. And as he envisions the throne room, right, his response is, the whole earth is full of his glory. I don't know about you, but my mind would go to the whole heavens are full of his glory. But as he sees God, he recognizes it's not just heaven, it's everything. It's all of it. Heavens and earth is full of God's glory. So going back to verse 1, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Think of it this way. The universe and God's creation is constantly giving testimony to the Creator, right? It's constantly giving testimony to what God has done. When you see a beautiful sunrise or sunset, right? It says here that the sky above proclaims his handiwork. When you see a sunrise or a beautiful sunset, right? When you see the stars and the moon at night, when you see a storm roll in. Yesterday we were doing some traveling and we're coming back and we could see this storm as we're getting closer and closer and closer, and it's absolutely incredible to see it, right? When we see those things, when we recognize God's creation, when we see the clouds, right? Anybody else like to look at the clouds and notice the shapes and things of what they could be, right? All right, a few of you are willing to admit that you do that with me. All right. There we go. Right? Or if you got little kids, right, they're looking out the windows. Look at that. When we view God's creation in any scenario, it's the testimony of creation that points to the Creator. How incredible God is. The heavens declare the glory of God. The sky above proclaims his handiwork. Goes on from there, verse 2. Day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There's no speech, nor are there words whose voice is not heard. Their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. Now, at first glance, right, I mean, this is poetry. You might look at this and you're like, I'm not sure what he's trying to say there. Day to day pours out speech, verse 2. Then verse 3, there is no speech. Then verse 4, their speech goes through all the earth. Like, what is he trying to say here? Well, let's talk about this really quickly. It's not a contradiction, okay? He goes from saying there's day to day pours out speech, there's no speech, there is speech throughout the whole earth. What is it? Well, these verses are pointing out that the beauty of God's creation is constantly telling us how great God's creation or how great God is. But listen, obviously it's not a literal voice. All right? You don't look at the trees and like, man, those are amazing trees. And the trees are like, yeah, isn't God just incredible? Listen, if you're hearing trees talk to you, we'll get you some help, all right? The creation is not a literal voice, and yet it speaks to all throughout the earth. They're words to the end of the world, right? No matter where you go, no matter what you see, right? As you view God's creation, you can't help but see as a follower of Christ how amazing God is. Interestingly, these verses are quoted by the Apostle Paul in Romans 10 as he points out that all the world has received some kind of a message that points them to God, yet they need a preacher, right? They need someone to come share with them the Word of God. Well, one of the general ways that this takes place is through this message of creation, that creation constantly points to the Creator. Look at verse 2. It says this, day to day and night to night. Whether it's day or night, the creation speaks to the majesty of the Creator. It reveals knowledge about God. Did you catch that in there? Night to night reveals knowledge. I don't know about you, but that supermoon a couple weeks back, right, was absolutely incredible. And I'm not great with science, all right? So you don't need to feel like you need to correct me if I'm wrong, but I got a couple nods from the first service, so I think I'm right with this. But from what I understood, from what I was understanding and learned about that supermoon, it's the closest that will be to the moon throughout the rest of this calendar year. And if you saw it, like that full moon just seemed absolutely incredible. And I don't know about you, but I don't look at that moon and be like, oh, that's kind of neat. Wonder how that got there. No, I'm like, look at God's creation. Look at what he's given us to see tonight. Isn't he amazing? Right? As you see the stars, you go out in a clear night and look at the stars. Man, it's incredible. I just think they just randomly showed up one day, don't you? No. I think God created the heavens and the earth just like he said, Genesis 1:1. It's really obvious when we begin to recognize how amazing God is, and whether it's day or night, creation speaks to the greatness of who God is. Well, verse 4 says this, their voice goes throughout all the earth, their words to the end of the world, and then it says this, transitions a little bit in here in the middle of verse 4, in them he has set a tent for the sun, which comes out like a bridegroom leaving his chamber, and like a strong man runs its course with joy. He's kind of given us this opportunity to kind of really compare to the greatness of the sun and how it comes out and what happens with it. Its rising is from the end of the heavens, and its circuit to the end of them, and there is nothing hidden from its heat. Like, once again, it's just pointing out to how incredible the sun is. How amazing it is. Nothing's hidden from its heat. Yesterday, we had an opportunity to spend the day with Candace's family, which doesn't happen a whole lot. And I was sitting there talking with my one brother-in-law for like a half hour. We were sitting in the sun, and I didn't think much of it. And I was in the shade most of the time, and then I went over and had a conversation with my sister-in-law and sat in the sun for about another half hour, 45 minutes. And then I got home last night, and I realized how red my shoulders and my neck were, right? Like, nothing's hidden from the heat of the sun, right? You ever think about in the dead of winter, right? Maybe you've done this. It's a cold day, but it's a clear day. And the sun is shining through that window in your home. Where do you want to go? You want to go right where that sun is shining. Why? Because it warms you, even on the coldest days. Listen, that's the amazing, God's amazing creation, and it points to how incredible He is. And what all this is trying to just point to is this reality of how incredible God is, of how amazing He is. You know, as you look at this, I want to just kind of categorize this a little bit for you, give you a little bit of a couple of theological terms to think about. As you look at verse 1 through 6 that we just walked through, it's talking about God's creation. And what we call that, if you're to study theology, it's called general revelation, how God is revealed through His creation. And now what we're going to look at in verses 7 through 11 is called special revelation. And what that is God revealing Himself through His Word. All right? So we've talked about general revelation. Now we're going to look at special revelation, His Word. And it says this in verse 7, the law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. I'm going to walk through these verses. I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead here. We're going to walk through those in just a minute, but I want you to notice a couple things. Listen to what the Bible Knowledge Commentary says about these passages. It says, the Old Testament frequently joins the description of the Lord as lawgiver. That's what we're going to see in verses 7 through 11. And creator, verses 1 through 6. Accordingly, in the first part of this psalm, El, God, is used in verse 1 to denote His power as the creator. It's what we have in Genesis 1, Elohim, right? He's God, He's the creator, He's the maker of all things. And then in the second part, Yahweh, the Lord, is used. It's the personal name by which He made Himself known as as Israel's covenant God. So there's this reality of even different names that are used that point to God as creator and then points to a personal relationship. With all of that stuff in mind, let me now jump into verse 7. But I want you to notice the poetry structure here, okay? I'm going to read it intentionally so that you can notice what's going on here. It says this, the law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. Verse 8, the precepts of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. Right? The rules of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. Let's back up to verse 7. There's 6 different statements that are made in these 3 verses. The first is this: the law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. The law of the Lord is perfect. In other words, it's blameless. It's blameless. And notice this, it revives the soul. Listen, God's Word, it's like CPR for our lives spiritually, all right? It's like spiritual CPR, if you will, all right? Think about the idea of reviving the soul, right? When you revive someone, you bring them back to life, right? When we dive into God's Word, it brings our souls back to life. Listen, when we don't spend time in God's Word, we need revived. And sometimes I think we try to go from Sunday to Sunday, and we're on life support by the time we get to the next Sunday. And we need God's Word to revive our souls. You know, as I think about it, there's this reality that you can spend time in God's Word, but if you're not really taking it in, if you're not really thinking about it, if you're not really considering it, if you're not really meditating on it, and we're going to talk about that word in a little bit, listen, you're going to end up to the point where you need revived, spiritually speaking. And only God's Word is going to do that. You can go to all kinds of other things, but it's God's Word that revives our soul. The law of the Lord. Notice he's going to make all these statements. The law of the Lord, the testimony, the precepts, the commandments, the fear of the Lord, the rules of the Lord. Another word would be statutes. There's different words that are used. If you were to go to Psalm 119 and read all 176 verses, in nearly every verse it uses a word like that. And really what he's trying to do is just point you back to God's Word, right? The precepts, the laws, the commandments, the rules. He's saying this, right here. This is what you need. And that's what he's doing here in this passage as well. The law of the Lord, God's Word, right? It's perfect. It's blameless. It revives our soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. Making wise the simple. I don't know about you, but school wasn't the easiest for me, right? Always bugged me when you'd have somebody like, oh, I forgot we had a test today. Did you say, no, I didn't study. And they take the test, and then like the next day, like, hey, what'd you get on that? I got a 97. You didn't even study, right? How did you do that? And here I might have studied, and I got a 72, right? I mean, like, how is that right? It's funny, I mentioned that first service, and I had somebody like, I still have nightmares about school. They were like, listen, you can have all the knowledge this world has to offer. You can have the most degrees by your name as anybody in the room, but it's God's Word that will truly make you wise. And it takes the one who is the most simple of individuals and makes them wise. That's God's Word. Verse 8 goes on with another statement, another similar statement. The precepts, once again pointing to the Word. The precepts of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. That word right has the idea of righteous or even fittest. It leads to the straightest path. The precepts of the Lord are right. And it causes the heart to rejoice. I mean, if you're a follower of Christ and you think back on times in your life where you're probably in a good place spiritually speaking, there are probably some joyful times there. Why? Because you're in God's Word. Does it mean everything's going to be simple, easy? No. But you know how to process things. You know how to process the struggles and the difficult times because you are constantly reviving the soul. You are taking in the precepts of the Lord that are right, that are righteous. The commandment, middle of verse 8, of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. The idea of pure there is just not mixed with anything else. It's clean, enlightening the eyes. Listen, if you want to see things clearly in life, get in God's Word. Right? You ever spend time with someone who's not a follower of Christ and they come to know Christ, they have a relationship with the Lord, they're getting into God's Word and they're like, man, I'm seeing life in a whole new way. I'm recognizing things in life that I didn't notice before. Why is that? God's Word impacting their heart and life. The Spirit residing and dwelling inside of them. Goes on to the next statement, says this: the fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The fear of the Lord often means revering God, but here it is the revealed way by which one properly reveres God. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. And then he says this: the rules of the righteous, of the rules of the Lord, are true and righteous altogether. God's Word is absolutely amazing. And you got to understand, if you aren't in God's Word, you're not going to see life clearly. And if you're wondering, like, man, why am I struggling? What's going on here? Why am I not? You got to be in the Word, and not just in it. You got to really ponder it. I read through the Bible every year. I read through it. I've done that for a number of years now, and I really enjoy doing it. But it can become really easy to just check it off, right? I did today's reading. Check, check, check. Did it. Got it done. That's not what we're talking about. We need to really consider God's Word. Really take it in and ponder it, to consider it, to think about it. And with all of these 6 statements that David has now made about God's Word, he says this, more to be, verse 10, more to be desired are they than gold. Like, putting all of this together, how amazing it is, right? It revives our soul. It makes wise the simple. It rejoices the heart, enlightens the eyes. It's enduring forever. We're righteous altogether. Listen, more to be desired are they than gold. More to be desired. God's Word is more to be desired than gold, even much fine gold, like the best, the purest you can find. Sweeter also than honey and drippings from the honeycomb. Moreover, by them your servant is warned. In keeping them, there is great reward. Listen, we should desire God's Word more than gold, more than wealth, more than a pay raise, more than a better paying job, more than the next paycheck, more than getting some overtime hours so that we can get time and a half or double pay, whatever it is. Listen, can we be real for a second? In America, we need to think about that for a minute. Because we constantly are thinking about, how can we make the next buck? How can we do some things? What can we do here? Listen, we need to be thinking about God's Word and in God's Word and considering that more than anything else. Why? Because it should be desired more than gold, even fine gold. Notice verse 11 says this, by them, by your word, right? Your servant is warned. And in keeping them, there's a great reward. That idea of the word warn there, the root word means to be light or shining, to shine brightly. Couldn't help but think of Psalm 119 again, right? God's word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. Yeah. It shows us what's coming ahead. It shows us, it warns us so that we don't get hurt, so that we don't trip, so that we don't fall and stumble. God's word is that lamp. It's that warning that we need. And notice as well, this reality that in keeping them, there is great reward. When we live out God's word, there's incredible reward with that. Well, notice as we go into verse 12 through 14, David's beginning to pull everything together. And really, verse 12 through 14 is David's response to God's creator. His creation points to his majesty. His word is incredible. And now with all of this, he says, who can discern his errors? Listen, it's God's word that shows us, right? And then he says this, declare me innocent from hidden faults. Keep back your servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion. Don't let them rule over me, control me, and then I shall be blameless and innocent of great transgression. David recognized that in light of who God is, in light of his creation, pointing to how amazing he is, and in response to God's word, the only response is a humble response. That's the only proper response that there could be. Like, David gets to this point where he's like, listen, God's amazing. He's done all this stuff. His word's incredible. I can't do it on my own. Who can discern his errors? God, declare me innocent from hidden faults. Keep me back from presumptuous sins. Don't let him control me. And then I shall be blameless and is innocent of great transgression. I was reading this week, I'm going through a book just on my own, and interestingly, the chapter that I read pointed out verse 13 in this idea of presumptuous sins. Listen to what it says. Too many of us fall into the sin of presumption. Presumption is a failure to observe the limits of what is permitted or appropriate. It also carries with it a whiff of ignorance. I think it's more than a whiff. It's a sin that the psalmist seemed particularly sensitive to and eager to avoid. Keep back your servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over me. Then I shall be blameless and innocent of great transgression. Because of this, Scazzaro says, I see limits as a guardrail protecting me from straying outside of God's will and keeping me on His path that will slowly unfold later. We've talked about guardrails in the past, and this is why we have them, to keep us in check, to keep us in our lane where we need to be. It keeps us from the sins of pride or arrogance that says, I don't need guardrails, I'm good. I know where I am. I can be this close to the edge and I'm fine. I can stand the other side of the guardrail and I'm okay. It's this reality of like, no, they're there for a reason. Guardrails are there for a reason. We need to stay in our lane. He says, keep me back from being prideful. Keep me back from presumptuous sins. Don't let them control me. And it leads to this place where we can say with David, then I shall be blameless and innocent of great transgression. Listen, any sin is sin, right? But there's this reality that some sins have greater consequences. And David says, I want to be innocent of these things. I don't want to live this way. Keep me where I need to be. And with all of that in mind, the greatness of who God is, how the creation just shouts to how amazing the Creator is, to how incredible His Word is, then he comes to this point to our words to live by for today. Let the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my Redeemer. Let me ask you a couple questions to help you think about this verse for you, okay? Let's start out with this first phrase, let the words of my mouth be acceptable, right? The words of my mouth. Listen, are the words that come out of your mouth pleasing to God? I mean, think about it for a minute. What comes out of your mouth? I had a situation earlier this week, conversation, and Caleb, my oldest son, pointed out something like, Dad, you said this. That wasn't right. And I had to, you know what? You're right. And I needed to ask him for forgiveness of it. Listen, are the words of your mouth acceptable in God's sight? What's coming out of your mouth? Listen to what Paul said in Ephesians 4. Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. I mean, talk about a message that we could all work on the rest of our lives. This verse could be that one, right? First of all, it says, let no corrupt words come out of your mouth, right? No corrupting talk come out of your mouth. And then it shows the other side of the coin. But only such as is good for building up. Listen, it is way easier to tear down than it is to build up. You have to be intentional to build up. Words that tear down can come out of our mouth like that. But if we're going to build up, we have to be intentional. If you were to do some construction work, right? Demo work is pretty simple. Doesn't take a whole lot of thought. Just yank it out, right? Rip it out, destroy it, get rid of it. But if you're going to intentionally build in the construction area, you got to think it through what you're going to do. You have to think through where you're trying to go with your words, right? We have to do that. Let no corrupt words come out of your mouth, only such as good for building up, then as fits the occasion. When that phrase comes to mind in a conversation, and you just want to spit it out there, but you're like, I don't know that I should say that. Listen, bite your tongue. Do yourself a favor. Do everybody else a favor. Bite your tongue. And I'm speaking to myself here because I'm that guy a lot, all right? But does it fit the occasion? Is it the proper time, or should we just be quiet? And then he says this, that it may give grace to those who hear. Are we offering gracious words to others? Are the words of our mouth acceptable, pleasing in God's sight? Boy, that's a real question for us to think about. Look at the next phrase, Psalm 19:14, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart, the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight. As we talk about the meditation of our hearts, let me put it this way. What are the things that you contemplate? What are the things that you contemplate in your mind, that you think about, that goes through your mind as you're going through the day, as you're in different places, different locations? What are you thinking? What's going through your mind? Maybe, what are the conversations that you're having in your mind? Right? What are the conversations that you're having in your mind about a situation that's bugging you, that's bothering you? You're like, yeah, if I could only just kill me. Like, you ever see somebody do that and you're like, I'll stay over here, thanks, right? What's going on in your mind? What are you contemplating? What are the things that you are thinking about? What is your heart desiring? What do you meditate on? I want to challenge you this week, because I tried to do this week. I tried to, throughout this past week, just at different times, think about this phrase, the meditation of my heart. And I tried to just hit the pause button. Hey, what am I thinking about right now? Just ask yourself that question. What am I thinking about? And you might be shocked at some of the things that are going through your mind. Why am I thinking about that? Man, I need to be thinking about this, right? I need to be thinking about the Lord. I need to be thinking about the situation that you might need to, maybe you ought to be thinking about work, about family, about responsibilities. What are you thinking about? What are you meditating on? I want to encourage you, hit the pause button at random times. Do it today. Do it this afternoon. Do it tonight. What am I thinking about right now? What's in my mind? What is the meditation of my heart? And is it really acceptable? Is it really pleasing to God? And let's think about that for a second, right? Is it acceptable to God? I don't care what culture says. Well, culture today is different. It's just, I don't care. You have to say, listen, is it acceptable to God? Is it acceptable in His sight? Think about this, as I was talking about this last night. Are the words and the thoughts that we have, are they acceptable in God's sight? In other words, let's say that backwards. God sees our words and our thoughts. That's scary. God sees what we're thinking. And is it really pleasing? Is it really acceptable? Is it holy? And then he finishes with this: O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. The name there, O Lord, it's Yahweh. It's God's covenant name. It's a personal covenant relationship there that David's having, right? This is a personal conversation. God, I'm bringing this to you. You're my rock. Psalm 18 talks a lot about God as our rock. If you were to look at Psalm 18 just before this, verse 46, the Lord lives, blessed be my rock, exalted be the God of my salvation. The name rock is used time and time again there. Or maybe your Bible says strength. O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. When you think about the word redeemer, it's a legal term. We think about, my mind runs to Ruth chapter 4, right? The kinsman redeemer. That God redeems us, that God rescues His people from distress. God rescue us from our words and our thoughts that aren't acceptable, that aren't pleasing to you. And coming back to where we started, like, how do people get to the point where they do those things? How did I get to the place where that came out of my mouth? Listen, when we meditate on God's creation, verse 1 through 6, when we meditate on His words, verse 7 through 11, when we contemplate those things, when we contemplate who God is on His words, those things will be acceptable to God. And I really believe that if we contemplate our words and our thoughts through the context of God's character in His word and through what it has to say, I really think it's going to help curtail some of these poor choices that we make. It's going to stop them dead in their tracks. Do we still have to make decisions? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, when we are thinking about God and His word, it changes what we do. as we think about this passage, as we begin to wrap this up, this verse really is a prayer request that our lives be lived out as a suitable act of worship. I mean, some of the wording here that's used is also used back in Leviticus to talk about sacrifice and worship and offerings to God. And with that in mind, I want you to think about Romans chapter 12, 1 and 2. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, by the mercy of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. How do we do that? Right here. Getting in this book, renewing our mind, reviving our soul, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. As we think about words to live by, I want to challenge you, memorize Psalm 19:14 in whatever version you want to memorize it in. All right, I know some of the people are like, had somebody after the first service, man, I just can't get the word strength out of it. Go with it, all right? But let this verse be the prayer of our hearts every day. Before our feet hit the floor in the morning, this is a great verse to pray. Pray over your day. Pray it throughout the day. Pray it before you go into a tough conversation. Pray this verse before you go into a difficult meeting. Pray this verse before you have time to really ponder and think about the next steps that you're going to make in life. Consider these words and pray them. I want to invite you, stand with me as we close. And let's recite this verse together, but I don't want you to just recite it. I don't want you to just read it. I want to challenge you, and only you can do this, but I want to challenge you as we say it together that you pray these words, that you recite these words as a prayer from your heart, okay? Let's do that. Psalm 19:14. Let's pray this. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. God, we come before you amazed at who you are, amazed at the power and authority of your word. God, we ask and pray that you would work in our hearts, work in our lives. God, guard our tongues. God, we're asking just what we prayed, that our words, that our thoughts would be acceptable in your sight. Not anybody else's, but in yours. God, we thank you for the power and authority of your word, for its transforming power in our lives, how it revives our souls. God, we ask and pray that you just continue to help us, remind us of our need to feed on your word on a consistent basis, to take it in, and that you do a great work in our hearts. Lord, I pray for those who are not followers of Christ, Lord, that you would open their eyes, that you would enlighten their eyes to the power of your word. I pray that as we view creation, that we would recognize the greatness of who you are, the God who made the heavens and the earth, who spoke them into existence. You alone are God. We praise you and we worship you. In Jesus' name.